Kia ora guys, and welcome back to the second part of our New Zealand story. This lesson is intended for 4th grade high school students, and my name is Davor Cherny and I will be your teacher for today. In this unit, you'll watch an original text about advantages and disadvantages of living in a country. You'll be writing an argumentative essay comparing life in a foreign country with life in Croatia, and you'll be exploring the culture of a foreign country. Let's get ready, get your equipment ready. Of course, feel free to pause the video at any time to do the activities. You'll find all the links in the video description. Well, what did we talk about in our first lesson on New Zealand? Do you remember? Can these pictures help you? We talked about its geography. We located New Zealand and its two main islands in the southern hemisphere, and we kind of concluded that it's far away from other continents. We also talked about its history and how New Zealand developed and what made it into what it is today. We also saw last time what part tattooing plays in the life of New Zealanders. Today we will start with another important thing in the life of many New Zealanders, and that is, can you guess? It is rugby. Rugby has been a very important part of New Zealand life and culture for more than 100 years now. We can see that the first game of rugby was played on 14th of May 1870, and the first local rugby team officially played its first game in 1884. New Zealand national team was first seen in action in public in 1892, and the name All Blacks and its tradition was started way back in 1905. What do you know about rugby? Well, if you want to learn more about the history of rugby in New Zealand, follow the first link. And if you want to learn how the game of rugby is played today, follow the second link and watch this short video. One thing that has become closely connected to rugby and the All Blacks is the haka, the traditional warrior dance of the Maori people. According to the Maori ethos, Tama Nui Tora, the sun god, had two wives, Hine Raumati, the summer maid, and Hine Taukurua, the winter maid. The child born to him and Hine was Tanerore, who is credited with the origin of the dance. Tanerore is the trembling of the air as seen on the hot days of summer, and represented by the quivering or shaking of the hands in the dance. Haka is the generic name for all Maori dance. Today, haka is defined as that part of the Maori dance repertoire where the men are to the fore with the women lending vocal support in the rear. Most haka seen today are haka taparahi, a haka without weapons. Moving on, what best way to learn about country's culture is through his movies. The first movie we're going to take a look at is called Once Were Warriors. We said that Maori were warriors, and this movie gives us an insight into what happened with the Maori culture after the introduction of the European culture. The movie Once Were Warriors was made in 1994 and is a New Zealand drama film based on New Zealand author Alan Duff's best-selling 1990 first novel. The film tells the story of the Hekes, an urban Maori family, and their problems with poverty, alcoholism, and domestic violence, mostly brought on by the patriarch Jake. The movie was made into a sequel titled What Broken Hearted, which follows the story of this broken family. Also on this page you have the links to the 5 best Maori movies and also a link for teachers which they can use to do the topic of this movie in class. So this is the cover of the movie. And what's interesting that the story that we follow in this movie is really an everyday story that can easily be both translated and transported into any culture or country today. So from the North American native Indians to European suburbs to any place in the world, we'll find stories similar to this one. So we'll watch the official trailer of the movie, and while watching I would like you to think about a couple of statements that we have here. The film is realistic, this film is moving, whatever happens to you in life, it's your own fault. The film is dated, this film promotes negative stereotypes, this film would have been greater if Grace had lived, the film has no hero, the film is unsuitable for children. So we're going to watch the trailer, and I would like you to think about these statements, if you agree with them or disagree.
A 1,000 years ago, the Maoris discovered New Zealand.
Our people once were warriors. They were people with pride, people with spirit.
Today, they are strangers in that land.
You too. Do you think we'll ever get out of here too?
Dunno.
Frightened.
You like your pretty boy face.
Angry. Lost.
Been keeping bad company.
Was that before or after you picked him up?
Once were warriors. The story of one woman's fight for freedom.
You're a hard lady, Bessie. You're a hard man, Jakey.
Aren't they beautiful when they're like that?
Just drunk, that's all.
People show their true feelings when they're drunk.
I got a temper on me, but who hasn't?
One family's fight for survival.
Leave that kid alone. You know, that's your problem. You spoil a lot of them.
Don't care about any of us.
Tell Jakey you love him.
This is trouble, Jake. I do.
In the spirit of the past,
You think your fist is your weapon?
there is power.
I have taught you. Your mind will be.
Pride,
I don't want any more of these drunken parties or your mates coming around.
possibility.
You're still a slave, Jake. To your fist. To the drink.
I'm a lovable chap.
To yourself.
Once were warriors.
Gonna hurt my babies anymore.
A woman's journey home.
Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the short trailer. Your assignment is to watch the film and write an essay, argumentative essay. Here are the two topics. The first topic is once were warriors, suggests that Maori are responsible for their own circumstances. Discuss. So generally we can say or ask ourselves the questions if we are responsible or if people are responsible for what happens to them in their own life. And the second topic, a negative event can act as a catalyst for a change. Discuss. So generally, if something bad happens to us, is this going to trigger the change? So watch the film and write the essay. Also, you can watch the second part of this film, What Broken Hearted, to see what happened later to the family. And this brings us to the third topic we have for today, and this is the topic of what is New Zealand today? Who are the people that live in New Zealand today? We saw in the first lesson that indigenous people living in New Zealand were the Maori, then came the Europeans of different sorts, and this shaped the history of New Zealand and what it is today. What is it like to live in New Zealand today? That's what we'll try to answer in the remaining part of this video. First of all, here is a list of some of the famous people of New Zealand today. First, we have a Flight of the Conchords, a comedy duo. Then we have a singer, Lady Six, a famous director, Peter Jackson, who directed the trilogy Lord of the Rings. Another group, Lordi, Steve Adams, John Alomu, the famous rugby player, and of course, one of the more famous people coming from New Zealand today is their Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern. So the second question we asked ourselves is, what is it like to live in New Zealand today? So you're going to watch a short video on pros and cons of living in New Zealand. Watch the video and list down in your notebook all the positive and all the negative sides of living in New Zealand. Please enjoy the video.
Yo, what is up everyone? We got a super special episode for you today. Today we're going to go over the top 5 best things about New Zealand and 5 things to watch out for. Yeah, so let's go check things out. So the perspective of this video is going to be from me, and I've grown up in New Zealand watching the All Blacks play. I've lived in Wellington, right now we live in Auckland, and so obviously there's going to be a little bit of bias because, you know, I do love this country, but at the same time I'm going to be as truthful and as honest as possible so you guys will know all the things to watch out for if you want to live here too. Let's go. So obviously one of the best things about New Zealand is definitely the nature. Let's go take an aerial shot. We're only a couple of minutes out from the city now. Whether it's beaches, a little bit of tramping, or just the outdoors in general really excites you, if that's the best thing that you love, then you definitely need to put New Zealand on your bucket list because nature here is just beautiful. Whether it's the geysers in Rotorua or the best one-day tramps or some little bit of skiing, it's different from wherever you go. There's also a great sense of community here in New Zealand. Everyone does their part to keep this country nice, clean and green. And if you're a citizen of New Zealand, you get free healthcare, you get free education. It's just a good place to grow up. If you're not as fortunate as others in New Zealand, the government does try and take care of you, which I think is a great thing. And there are so many different cultures in New Zealand as well, and I think all of them generally get along really well. One of the other awesome things about having so many different cultures in New Zealand is that you get access to so many different varieties of food. Massive plus. Yo guys, we're currently here at Auckland Boys Grammar. This is where the legendary All Black Doug Howlett went as well, and it's also where I went to school. So why are schools in the pro bracket? Well, in New Zealand, you're not just encouraged to be an athlete or a sports star or an academic, you're kind of encouraged to chase your own dream. And that's one of the awesomest things that you can have, especially when you're growing up. So massive plus. And New Zealand schools are ranked the top 20 in the world. Just another reason to raise your family here. Yo! Another great thing about New Zealand, it's super safe. It's ranked among the 7th safest place in the world to live, and also there's not many critters that can hurt you. The worst you might get is a bee sting or a whitetail sting. So, live in a nice comfortable bubble wrapped environment right over here. Massive thumbs up. And finally, the biggest plus of New Zealand is definitely the people. Whether it's the humor, want a ghost chip? Nah, I'm good bro, alright. Or whether it's just because you want to get your deck built out in the back, beer is an acceptable form of payment here in New Zealand. Everyone is generally nice to each other, and I love that about this place. So that wraps up all the great things about New Zealand, but before you buy your ticket over here, let's go check out some of the things that you might need to watch out for if you're coming to New Zealand as well. Guys, the biggest thing to watch out for if you're coming to New Zealand is that it can be a little bit expensive. I dedicated a whole episode to that. I'll leave the link down in the description below. But yeah, whether you're coming here as a tourist or if you're coming here to live, it will cost you a little bit of money for food, for accommodation, and for tourist activities as well. And now that leads on to the second thing. And the second thing is, we're pretty far from the rest of the world. We're only a small country. It takes 3 hours to get to Australia and about 8 to 10 hours to get to the rest of Asia Pacific. That's pretty far away. It's really far away. Which also means a lot of the flights that you're getting into New Zealand are going to be transitioning in a different country. There are some direct flights, but they're a lot harder to find and they're often more expensive. But once you get here, it certainly is beautiful. One of the biggest things to watch out for in New Zealand is definitely the weather. In autumn, spring, and winter, you can have all 4 seasons in a day. And in summer, you need to learn to slip, slop, slap. Put on your hat, put a little bit of sunscreen on, otherwise you're gonna get burnt. And you don't want none of that, it's gonna ruin your whole holiday. The sun's really potent here in summer. You can burn in a couple of minutes. Stay sun smart. Another thing to watch out for in New Zealand is definitely the public transport. Though in big city centres, it has gotten a lot better over the years. If you're going out from the city centres, it's generally a lot harder to get the transportation that you need to get to the places. So you're not going to have easy access to buses, you're not going to have easy access to trains. If you're going to go to a tourist spot, you're definitely going to want to do a little bit of planning beforehand to find out where your best routes are. Yo, so one of the things about living in New Zealand is that relatively compared to the rest of the world, the cities are pretty small. So if you're not into hanging out with friends, playing sports, or into nature, well, if you're searching for that big city vibe, this isn't going to be the place for you. But then again, that is a pro and a con. So, you know, a lot of people are actually looking to get away from it all. And if that's you, then this is your place. Personally, I couldn't think of a better country to live in than New Zealand. Every single time we're overseas, I always get homesick. But hopefully I gave you guys enough knowledge to make up your own minds. So if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you smash that like and subscribe button, and we'll catch you on plenty more episodes about New Zealand and food. Catch ya.
So, I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you need to, you can watch it again following this link. And if you want to learn more about life in New Zealand, you can follow Peter and Jan on their YouTube channel. So let's check our answers. So let's take a look first at the good sides of living in New Zealand. First, he mentions nature, which is obviously very beautiful. Then he talks about the community and how people help each other in New Zealand. Then he mentions the benefits, for example, free healthcare, free education, and he mentions that schools are in the top 20 in the world. He mentions the multiculturalism as a positive side of living in New Zealand, the safety, and the 7th agenda was people. The negative sides of living in New Zealand: cost of living, since it's far away from everything, it's quite expensive to live there. It's of course far away, it takes a long time to get there. Expensive plane tickets. The weather, because it can change quite quickly and it's very dangerous in the summer, the sun. And they still have a problem with public transport. It only works in the center of the big cities. When you leave the center, there is a problem. The last thing he mentions, and that's for you to decide whether it's a positive or a negative side, cities are small, so there is no real party life, so there is no going out partying and places like that. So it's up to you to decide whether this is a positive or a negative thing. To learn more about pros and cons of living in New Zealand and to compare this to Croatia, you can follow these two links, so cost of living in Auckland and 25 iconic Kiwis or 25 iconic New Zealand items. So watch the two videos and compare them to Croatia. So compare the cost of living in Auckland to the cost of living in Zagreb, for example, and compare the 25 iconic Kiwi things to, for example, 25 iconic items you can find in Croatia. So before we part, think about all the lessons that you have gone through in this school year and give us a little feedback following this link or the QR code. Here is a list of links used in this two-part video lesson on New Zealand. You will find all these links in the video description below. I would like to express my gratitude to the Encyclopedia of New Zealand, Peter and Ian YouTube channel, New Zealand Film Commission, Tourism New Zealand, and the New Zealand Tattoo Shop for all the tattoo information and photos. If you want to learn more about New Zealand's past, watch the first part of this lesson on iNastava YouTube channel. Another assignment you can do: follow the link, travel itinerary, and make a class presentation of your virtual journey to New Zealand using this itinerary. Or you can use any other itineraries from this website. Follow the link Myths and Legends, choose one of the stories, and report back to the class. Thank you for your attention. Hope you enjoyed this video lesson, and maybe we'll see each other next time. Bye.